What if the one thing you've been chasing your entire life is actually keeping you from your true self? Have you ever considered that your desperate search for love might be nothing more than fear of sitting alone with your own thoughts? That your relentless pursuit of partnership could be an elaborate escape from the silence you've been running from your whole life? The Stoics understood something society has collectively forgotten. Our greatest fear isn't loneliness, it's the confrontation with ourselves that solitude demands. But what happens when you stop running? Picture your final day. The room is still. The questions come. Did you live your own life, or did you merely borrow someone else's script? The chains we accept willingly are the hardest to break. We dress them in romance, in the promise of completion. But beneath the surface, something stirs, a whisper that you were built for something more. The chains we choose are the ones that hold us longest. If that whisper has reached you, this is your conversation. Most people don't enter relationships from wholeness. They enter from panic. The silence after the noise fades is so unbearable they'll reach for anyone to fill the void. Not because they want that person, but because facing themselves feels impossible. We rarely acknowledge how much of what we call love is avoidance dressed in beauty. It's easier to lose yourself in someone else's story than to confront your own truth. Jung observed that loneliness isn't about having no one around, it's about being unable to communicate what matters to you. When love is built on fear, it becomes fragile. Every disagreement is a threat. Every moment of distance a crack in the foundation. People cling harder. They bargain away values, silence desires, twist themselves into shapes they were never meant to occupy. At that point, it's no longer love, it's survival. A desperate attempt to avoid being left alone with the very silence they've spent their lives running from. What if the love you're clinging to is actually the prison you built for yourself? Marcus Aurelius understood that freedom requires something most won't give. Stopping the search for external validation, facing the void within, and discovering it's not a void at all, it's a doorway. Love should make you taller, not smaller. When fear controls love, love becomes a contract of unspoken terms. Don't be too much. Don't change too fast. Don't disturb the balance, even when it's slowly suffocating you. People pay with authenticity, creativity, growth. The currency is the very life they were meant to live. The silence they're fleeing isn't their enemy, it's their teacher. In solitude, noise fades and you hear your own voice again. At first, it's uncomfortable. Doubts, fears, regrets. But if you stay, you also hear values, calling, truth. The fear at the heart of love is rarely about losing another. It's about losing the distraction they provide. When you remove that distraction, you're left with yourself. That's the scariest encounter of all. But it's also the one that changes everything. Once you can sit in your own silence without needing to escape it, you stop depending on others to make you feel whole. You begin to choose love rather than being driven by necessity. How do you break free from this invisible prison? From childhood, the narrative begins. You grow up, find someone, fall in love, settle down. The ultimate destination. The final chapter. But few ask what happens after that fade to black. And fewer question whether this script robs us of the chance to meet ourselves. This conditioning doesn't arrive with a loud announcement. It's subtle. It lives in casual questions. When are you going to meet someone? It hides in compliments about relationship status. By adulthood, it's absorbed like gravity. Without realizing it, people believe a life without a partner is incomplete. They enter relationships not from readiness, but from duty to a story they never wrote. Jung wrote that the most terrifying thing is accepting yourself completely. For many, Relationships avoid that work. If someone validates you, you don't have to validate yourself. The Stoics understood this trap. Marcus Aurelius observed it's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them. The quiet judgment, alone equals failure, together equals success. This false equation keeps people trapped. The script doesn't account for individuality. Some thrive in partnership, others need solitude to grow. But conditioning rarely allows the second option. This pressure lives inside you, even when no one's watching. Restlessness in your own company. Measuring progress not by self-knowledge, but by closeness to the blueprint. The danger is this blueprint discourages self-exploration. If the goal is set, why wander? The conditioning says finding yourself is secondary to finding someone else. The world's script was written by strangers. You hold the pen now. The first step is awareness. To see the story for what it is, a story, not a law. When you realize you can write your own script, the urgency fades. Singleness becomes opportunity, an open field for ideas and parts of yourself that couldn't survive in the cramped soil of approval seeking. The erosion of self doesn't happen in one moment. It's slower. So slow you convince yourself nothing's changing. It starts with a tiny compromise, skipping something you wanted, softening your opinion, telling yourself it's not worth the argument. Maturity, meeting in the middle, feels harmless, even noble. But over time, the person you were fades, not because anyone demanded it, because you offered it piece by piece, unaware of the cost. The shift is so subtle you barely feel it happening. You adapt to smooth things over, keep peace, protect the bond you think you can't live without. There's a difference between adapting and erasing, filtering thoughts, swallowing desires, hesitating to speak your truth, trading authenticity for security. The cost of belonging can be the loss of yourself. Over time, the person in the mirror feels familiar but distant. The outline remains, but the inner fire, the specific combination of thoughts, desires, expressions, has dimmed, vibrant colors muted to gray. This slow disappearance happens in friendships, families, workplaces, anywhere belonging outweighs the courage to stand as yourself. The painful truth, disappearing doesn't strengthen the bond. It weakens it. Relationships built on partial truths create fragile foundations. Marcus Aurelius said the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If your thoughts are tailored to avoid conflict, your soul adopts muted tones. Reclaiming yourself isn't about refusing compromise. It's about remembering that truest love thrives when both people stand whole. Belonging is one of our deepest needs. We're wired for it, to feel anchored. There's comfort in having somewhere to return to. But the quiet toll of belonging grounded in fear is real. The cost shows up as constant negotiation of thoughts, desires, essence, learning which parts are welcome and which must hide. Safety of belonging comes wrapped in rules, some spoken, most not. Certain opinions left unsaid, ambitions toned down, emotions measured. Slowly you live in middle ground, never too much, never too little, always adjusted to fit. Epictetus said to improve, be content to be thought foolish. But belonging makes us unwilling to be misunderstood. The cost of belonging can be the loss of yourself. One day, you realize you no longer say what you think unless safe. You've stopped chasing dreams that don't align. The cost isn't always dramatic. It's small, invisible installments. The joke not made. The truth unspoken. The risk untaken. Over time, you live for stability, not clarity. You trade individuality for security. Staying single means owning your thoughts, desires, essence, not isolation. sovereignty. Jung believed individuation can't happen when self depends on others' approval. Choosing yourself over belonging means standing apart, breaking rules, letting go of relationships that can't hold your truth. When you strip away others' voices, something unexpected rises. At first, it's unsettling, quiet, almost too loud. Thoughts surface, ideas buried under conversations, no one to distract. They rush in with intensity. Jung said whoever looks outside dreams, whoever looks inside awakes. Solitude forces that awakening. Clarity deepens. Without constant negotiation, ideas stretch further. The world inside expands. This is what people rarely mention about being alone, how your mind sharpens when there's nothing to dilute it. At first, solitude can feel like loss, no partner, no echo, but you realize you've been given space, pure, unclaimed, unmeasured space. And space reveals truth. Marcus Aurelius said you have power over your mind, not outside events. In solitude, you stop outsourcing validation. It comes from inside out. The power is hard to describe until you feel it. In stillness, desires sharpen. Dreams become yours or reveal themselves as inherited. You feel the pull toward things forgotten. Solitude shifts from uncomfortable to addictive. Not avoiding people, tasting freedom without compromise. In solitude, you don't lose yourself. You find who you always were. The Stoics would see this as aligning with nature. Following your inner compass, you notice how much of life was reaction, reacting to someone else's mood. Now, energy goes to creation, not managing others' emotions before exploring your own. Time feels different. Open, you pursue ideas fully. Start at midnight. Stop to follow a new thought. Days when quiet feels heavy still come. But even then, you understand, the weight has meaning. Building capacity to stand on your own. Eventually, solitude stops feeling like void, starts feeling like home. You no longer fear being alone because you've seen what can be built there. Once you experience clarity, sharpness, unfiltered desire, you protect that space, not as a wall, as ground you stand on. Steady, unshakable, because when you belong to yourself, no connection can take that, no absence can strip it. From earliest stories, a promise, someone out there will complete you. Fairy tales, songs, movies, you're not whole until you find your other half. Beneath the romance is a dangerous belief. On your own, you're incomplete. Accept that belief, and you live as though worth depends on someone else. Every action weighs the hope of being chosen. You might adjust ambitions, downplay parts that don't fit. Over time, identity becomes about securing connection, not truth. This isn't love. It's dependence disguised as devotion. Dependence offers false security. You measure yourself by how well you fit someone else's life. You ignore inner signals because chasing them might disrupt the bond. A life built on another is a life built on sand. When you buy into incompleteness, relationships become lifelines. Losing someone feels like losing a part of yourself. That's why people stay where they're not nourished. They believe leaving means becoming less than whole. But you were never half of a whole. You were always an entire person, capable of love, creation, purpose without needing to fuse. The wholeness you seek can only be built within. Where did this come from? Culture. Society idealizes the couple. Single life is a waiting room. Even language reflects this. Settling down implies only partnership brings true form. But partnership isn't guaranteed fulfillment. Singleness isn't a sentence of lack. Marcus Aurelius said very little is needed for a happy life. It's all within. The myth of incompleteness hides this, keeping people searching outward. Breaking free doesn't mean rejecting relationships. It means approaching them from self-sufficiency. When you're not waiting for completion, love becomes choice, not dependency. Jung said true connection only happens when both have confronted their inner world. Choosing wholeness can feel lonely at first. Without validation, you face yourself fully. Flaws, strengths, unrealized potential. That's the work most avoid. But once you build a complete life, something changes. Fear fades. Self-worth stops swinging with others' moods. Relationships aren't for filling voids. They're for sharing abundance. The myth is powerful because it's repeated so often. But the truth is simpler. You're not half of anything. You're whole, complex, capable. Live from that place, and you'll tolerate less that requires you to shrink. Love becomes complement, not antidote. Society makes preferences clear without saying them. Milestones, house, marriage, children, predictability. When you're coupled, people think they know what comes next. Your life has shape, easier to control. Step outside that pattern, and you become harder to define. Unpredictability makes people uneasy. It signals freedom, the kind that can't be managed. The herd offers safety. Acceptance, with one unspoken rule: don't stray too far. The thriving single person lives by their own rhythm, makes choices without consensus, moves unpredictably. That's power. If no one can predict your next step, no one sets your direction. Without constant negotiation, you pivot when inspiration strikes. Take risks. Chase opportunities that make no sense to anyone but you. The herd tries to pull you back. Don't you want someone? Aren't you afraid of ending up alone? These questions assume a life outside the couple is less complete. They can't see that chosen solitude is luxury. Open space for self-determination. What unsettles people most isn't your solitude. It's your contentment within it. If you're alone and miserable, the herd feels validated. But when you're alone and thriving, you disrupt the narrative. Your contentment is the greatest threat to their certainty. Jung said intense conflicts overcome leave behind calm. The thriving single person faced societal expectation and found calm the herd can't replicate. Unpredictability breeds resilience, less shaken by change. Built to adapt. This adaptability lets you seize opportunities and weather challenges without losing yourself. The difference isn't about relationships, it's about agency. The herd follows patterns. The outlier risks stepping off the path, and in claiming that risk, they gain the right to live entirely on their own terms. The thriving single understands unpredictability is potential, openness to be shaped by choice. Not rejecting connection. Rejecting the idea that connection must cost individuality. In a world rewarding predictability, the outlier's refusal to be easily defined is both rebellion and declaration. I belong to myself first. That self-possession can't be given. It's built. Earned, protected. Once you taste that freedom, you can never go back. There's a point in solitude where something shifts. At first, it's a space you try to fill, a room too quiet, a life missing a sound you're used to. But if you stay, if you resist rushing back to comfort, something remarkable happens. The silence stops feeling like punishment. It starts feeling like strength you didn't know you had. You wake up and realize you don't need to check in before deciding. You don't need reassurance when doubt creeps in. You've learned to steady yourself. That's the quiet power of independence. Unshakable, you've stopped outsourcing stability. The Stoics understood, freedom comes when you control your own mind. A deep calm settles. You've been through doubt, long nights questioning if you could stand alone. You emerged unbroken. You no longer fear quiet because you hear your own voice in it. That voice becomes louder, clearer than outside noise. Relationships change, not by pushing people away, but by redefining why they're in your life. No longer seeking completion, you choose people who expand you. Love becomes sharing abundance, not filling void. Jung believed real connection happens between two whole individuals, each responsible for their own growth. When you've met yourself fully, you meet others without unspoken need. This unshakable self isn't without vulnerability. You still feel pain, longing, but they no longer destabilize. You're not afraid of loss the same way. You've been alone and survived. You've found rich inner life no one else could give. The more you belong to yourself, the more freely you can give to others. Time changes. You stop rushing to feel days. You savor moments. Even ordinary experiences become rich. They're not placeholders. They are life itself. When you finally meet this version of yourself, you realize you were never incomplete. You were obscured by noise, distraction, dependence. Strip that away, and you see what was always there, a self that is whole, steady, deeply alive. That's the moment you become unshakable. You can never go back to the kind of life where peace depends on someone else holding you together. The self you've finally met isn't fragile. It's the strongest thing you'll ever stand on. In the end, the greatest freedom is realizing you are already whole. Protect that truth. Live by it. Never let the world convince you otherwise. You were never incomplete. You were just waiting to meet yourself.